a lot of the time, the people that aren't working your system are the ones who are saying the system doesn't work. You're not doing everything. Like you're not following the recipe. You're focusing on your strengths and ignoring your weaknesses. You're not spending money on marketing. You're not doing this. And it gets really frustrating. And that's why franchisors, I think, are like, they're not following the model. Of course, they're not making money. If your spouse is not just concerned and worried about risk or anything like that, but is like really against like the business concept, you're never going to win that argument. And you need the spousal support down the line because small business, there's going to be rough patches. And you definitely don't need someone in your ear saying like, I told you so. I find in franchising, I'm sure you found this too, is at first I was like, I can't believe this guy in Tennessee is giving me his secrets on how he's like driving membership sales. But I found later on, even with people like we were competing with in franchising, if they think you're doing a good job for your consumers and your team, they're happy to share stuff with you. I find that franchising is the most sharing environment that I've ever been in terms of business.
Welcome to the Zero to Profitable Franchise Podcast, the best place for you to come to figure out the right franchise to buy and how to get and stay profitable. My name is Tariq Johnson, and I've bought, grown, and sold multiple franchises and got myself free from corporate America, and now I'm on a mission to help you do that too. Here you'll find some of the most in-depth profitable franchise secrets, tangible strategies, and specific mindsets to help you create your dream life through franchising. All right, everyone, welcome to the Zero to Profitable Franchise Podcast. I'm here with Guy. Thanks for joining me, man.
It's a pleasure to be here, Tariq.
I'm glad you're here. So we had a good chat, and you have a really interesting background. So you have been a franchisor and have lived the dream of experiencing an exit to a large company. You've been a franchisee for a long time.
Yep.
I'm curious, what are some of the myths that you hear about franchising that you feel like, that's not true?
Well, that's a really good question, and it kind of goes to the core of, some of the knocks against franchising, which I'm here to say um, don't apply to 99% of franchises. One of the myths and one of the big things that is sold to people a lot of times, the biggest thing is semi-absentee. It's semi-absentee, and and any franchise that you're getting into, unless you're a huge multi-unit operator or something like that, is at the end of the day, what I picture franchising as, it's a small business, United States small business, that uses a model that really leverages tools, processes, and community to get people the results they want faster. That's how I look at it. And in any small business, if anybody's been in small business and has succeeded up to this point, they know that particularly at the beginning, it is not semi-absentee. It's semi not there, and it's always thinking about it.
Yeah, that's
So
funny.
that would be that would be the first thing that I would say. And that, yes, it is a huge leverage tool. It's going to help people get results faster. But it the the cake needs to bake. It's like in the beginning, if you're talking about single unit operators, you got to be in there so that you know how to do everything. You set the pace, you set the tone, you find people that you can replace yourself with down the line. Um, I was like every once in a while you kind of brag to your spouse or something like that. And I was saying to my wife, Stephanie, who's co-founder of Frenchies and partner in everything that we do together. I was saying something really good about like one of our businesses and how smooth it's running, which is just begging to jinx yourself, right? So it hasn't, the shoe hasn't dropped yet. But she's like, well, we have owned it for 12 years, so it's not like you got this going right away. So she kind of brought me back down to, it's been going well for, longer than that. But it's like it takes time, and she reminded me like, yeah, remember we were so scared that it wasn't going to work in that community because it was like 4 hours away from our house that we moved there and leased a house for a year. Like Yeah, it wasn't easy from the get-go, Guy. I was like, yeah, you're right, you're right. So,
Oh man, that's crazy.
yeah, yeah, that was an interesting story. We had built a bunch of Anytime Fitnesses in Colorado, all over in small towns. So the closest one to our house was like an hour away, and the furthest one was over 6 hours away. And and they were doing really well, and we signed a lease in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and um, the the head of the whole franchise system, Chuck Runyon, of Anytime, was like, "Yeah, I don't think it's going to work too well in Steamboat Springs." And we're like, "Oh, we got a ton of respect and still do for Chuck." We're like, "Oh, that's not heartwarming." And then my business mentor, who's now he's 82 years old, super successful guy. He's from Steamboat, and he's like, "Oh, that's never going to fly in Steamboat." We're like, "Well, we already signed a 10-year lease, so we are going to Steamboat." And so my wife, who thinks out of the box way better than I do, she's like, "Well, why don't we just go lease a house there, and then if it flies and it does well, it'll be on our backs, and if it doesn't, we won't have anybody else to blame." And I'm like, "All right." So we did, and it was probably one of our better decisions ever. That was 2009, and we still have that club, and it's doing better than it's ever done. But we were there, like we were out putting and that's when we had 6 clubs already. Like we were putting door hangers, like taking the stroller with the 2 boys, putting door hangers on doors. Like we still have some of those members. Like, I remember when you came to my door with like with a kid with you or something. I'm like, yeah, he's 19 now. So that's the kind of thing. Yeah, he is. And he's working in another one of our businesses. But yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing. And um, that I'm a huge believer in the model, and that pretty much, unless there's illegal stuff going on, which is pretty rare, although I have seen it, is that if you work it'll work. If other people in the system are having success, then it's going to work for you. And don't listen to your own excuses about my market's different, the kids are here are different, or whatever. You hear that all the time. And I was a preferred vendor for Anytime Fitness, doing their resales for years. And I've sold those clubs for $80,000, and I've sold them for $800,000. And every time the $80,000 person was like, "Yeah, the model doesn't work in my hometown." And I'm like, "Kind of does." Like, you could.
Interesting.
Yeah, because we see it so many times, as you do, right? With resales, someone it's just not the right fit for somebody, that owner or whatever. And then someone comes in that knows how to operate or operates it very differently, and same location, same model, same everything, and they make it work. So you see it over and over again. It's like, it will work. It will work, you know.
So our team have looked into a few hundred franchises and put together a list of 5 low-cost franchises that all make $1 million or more and that have a proven track record of both happy and profitable franchisees. So if you have a net worth of at least $150,000 and you want to see if the territory that you want is still available for any of these franchises, then you can go to franchiseempire.com/check territory. All right, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, that is one of the really interesting parts. But don't you think that there is an element of market? I always it's always interesting in having this conversation. Whenever I talk to franchisors that are only franchisors, right? They're always like, "No, it's never the market. It's always the franchisee." But like sometimes, I mean, you do have people where they're like, "Hey, man, I'm following the system. I'm working hard." And it's just not working for me. So I guess what is that what is that balance? I don't know. And you are much more experienced than I am in franchising, having been a Zor and a Z in all those different locations. So what factor does market play? And hold on, before you answer, I'll give you an example. So when my first store was in California, we built that from scratch, not a competitor within a 5-mile radius of us in the area that we were in. We're right off the highway. I mean, great location, brand new shopping center, everything pretty much opened at the same time. So it was just like people flooded to it. Store was easy from the beginning. We did 30,000 in sales the second month, and we were just churning. bought a turnaround resale in Florida where there was no brand recognition, right? And in California, a ton of brand recognition. That's where the franchisor gets started. No brand recognition in Florida. We were the only store. We were in Jacksonville. The other 2 or 3 stores in Florida were in Miami. So no one knew who we were, what we were. There were 3, 4, 5 competitors, juice bars around us within about a 2-mile radius. And man, I grinded and I worked harder at that store than I did at the first one.
Yeah.
And we could not see the same result. So I'm curious, what's your take on that? What's your perspective?
Well, I 100% agree with you that there is some component to that for sure. My my example of that would be I was talking to someone that had I don't know 30 something great clips or something, and we were just talking about our different levels of experience and units, and I was like, yeah, like we had some clubs that were, in baseball terms, they were singles. They made pretty good margin, but nothing great. They were harder to run. The clientele was a little bit different. And then we had home run clubs. And grant, this is same size, same exact equipment, same marketing. Like there couldn't have been any more similarities besides the market. And so, and it was interesting because the guy just kind of nodded like, well, of course, like if you have multiple units, some are going to perform better than others, which goes to your point is if they're all the same, how come one of them's a home run and one of them's a single? Right? Like that's the only difference is the market and maybe the employees in there or something like that. But if they're held to the same expectations and same processes, then you do go to market, right? So there is something to be said for that. And what I would say to that, especially for anybody's like thinking about getting into franchising, like, well, what if this market I choose is a single market? It's like, well, you might find that's the case and you might have to grind, but if it's a successful system, I would say it's really unlikely that it's totally going to fail in your market. Like in the US, there's differences, of course. You go to New Orleans versus St. Louis versus California versus Florida. There's very different tastes and preferences and things like that. But overall, I think if there's enough success in the system, it probably indicates that you could have some modicum of success there. It might just be more of a grind, as you said. Like you didn't be like you weren't like, well, it's not as easy in California. I guess the model doesn't work. It's like, no, this market is different. Like I gotta guerrilla market and I gotta do this and I gotta go to networking events and I gotta hire maybe more people and maybe they're a little more expensive or something like that. So I totally get what you're saying. And I also get the franchisor perspective because a lot of the time, the people that aren't working your system are the ones who are saying the system doesn't work. It's like you're not doing everything. Like you're not following the recipe. Like you're focusing on your strengths and ignoring your weaknesses. You're not spending money on marketing. You're not doing this. And it gets really frustrating. And that's why franchisors, I think, are like, they're not following the model. Of course, they're not making money. It's like, so you have a lot of that. It kind of just goes to an excuse factor, to be honest, to a large degree. But I think what you're saying is absolutely true. There are some markets and competitive landscapes that are just going to make that going a lot easier and maybe a lot faster, which is really important. Lucky for you, your first one was the easy one. So you're like, yeah, I'm doing a second one. Like if it was the other way around, you'd be like, I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
doing a
probably would have
second
never
one.
done the second one. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and you learned and you know better than me. Like, it's like, yeah, I'm the same leader. I have the same processes, same product. This one's hard. That one was easy for a while. Then again, because I know you built more than that, is like you learned a lot at this one that was the grind. You probably got creative, and said like, well, we got to do something different because I'm not failing. Like, and maybe the cash.
Failure was not an option. Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it's different with service-based models. But I was talking to someone who's built a pretty significant kind of franchise empire, and They were saying that with anything that has a location, it is pretty location based. Like the location you get makes a huge difference. And what's interesting is even though we weren't really known in that market, I think part of what happened is the previous owner that we bought it from, who ran the store pretty terribly. He would just like if it was raining, he'd close down. Like it was just like
Okay.
it was like one of those guys,
Hobby.
just like a pain in the butt. The franchisor thought he was very difficult, and but he picked a location purely because it was like really close to his house. And okay, I could see how you could have thought it was a good location because it was like by the beach, but to open up a market, not the right fit. So tell me about that. Like you cuz okay, actually let's take a step back for a second. I briefly talked about kind of your resume and what you've accomplished, but just for some context, can you just brag for like 30 seconds? I know
Yeah.
you're a super humble guy. That's one of the things I know about you. But just brag for a second and tell us about what you've accomplished in the world of franchising before we go any further.
Sure. And thank you for that compliment. So any brag I do is it's as much of a brag on my wife and our marriage as it is on anything that I bring to it, just because we do everything together. But a law like in 2006, I was selling a lot of health clubs across the country. I was a business broker that specialized in health clubs, and so um, as you do as well, as anything you get into, you kind of just go deep and you're reading all the trade journals and the blogs and everything. And I saw something about Anytime Fitness. It had like less than 100 units, and I just thought it was a really cool idea because of the low employee overhead. And I've always been interested in fitness, and I knew a little bit about finance and gyms and things like that. And I'm like, this model seems to check all the boxes. And so I asked my brother-in-law, who lives in the town next to where Anytime Fitness was founded, and I'm like, hey, do you know anybody that's involved in Anytime Fitness? And this is a testament to Chuck Runyon back in the day, his humility. My brother-in-law Dan goes, yeah, I think one of the guys that I golf with owns one or two of them. And then he came back and he goes, yeah, like I talked to Chuck, my buddy Chuck, and yeah, he founded Anytime Fitness. I'm like, oh yeah, so he owns a little bit more than one or two of them. And um and so we went down the path because we wanted to be in business with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law too. And so we walked into the office to buy a territory and kind of dip our toe in the water. And Chuck was in sales at that point in time. If you ever met Chuck, he could sell ice to an Eskimo. And we walked out with 6 territories. Back in the day, they weren't as expensive as they are now. And so we purposely wanted to get good at remote management because we wanted to put them in small towns, and we live in Denver. And so we built our first club 6 hours away from our house, and 2 mountain ranges away, so that if there was something going wrong, I wasn't tempted to go try to fix it myself. I wanted to build up this network of suppliers and service people and everything like that so that we could replicate it in small towns across Colorado. And the model at that point in time was really basic. Their design manual is like, find 5,000 square feet, buy a bunch of purple paint, and make sure there's at least one shower in the place. It's a little bit more sophisticated now that Rourke owns it and all that. But so long story short is we got into franchising that way. Great experience. It was so much fun, like building, like when people are coming to our system, I'm like, you guys don't know how cool this is in the beginning stages, because you're going to look back on this like, oh, I went to the first conference, there was 200 people there, now there's 5,000, like, and everybody, and you feel like you can't go through the hotel lobby because so many people or something. So got to learn franchising that way as the franchisee. Followed their models. Like, we're not super creative people, but we'll just put our head down and have faith in the process and execute, and that's what we did. And we had really, really good success. And I think that's a function of Anytime the Anytime Fitness model, and us just kind of blindly following it. Um, and then my wife had stayed home with our kids for a couple of years, and she's a businesswoman. She's very driven, needs to relate to other adults. um, and she's a fantastic mom too. But she's like, I'm gonna go work for Anytime Fitness, and I said, well, we live in Colorado, they're in Minnesota. How are you gonna do that? She's like, I'm just gonna call Chuck, and that he'll find something. And so she did, and she started out in franchisee support, which was really one of the bases for our success in franchising. I think is like we understood the need and the importance of support, like really good support and engaging support, because Stephanie started out there and she was the only person at Anytime Fitness that handled multi-unit owners. So at one point in time, she had 111 owners that owned over 500 clubs. And she was the support person for all of these people.
Oh my goodness.
So now it's like, yeah, now it's like, 1 to 35 or 1 to 40 clubs or something like that. It was crazy, but I'm totally biased, but she's a rock star, and she kind of kept on going up through the organization. And she's still friends with a lot of those owners that we see at conferences and things like that. Um, so I'm running the clubs, I'm building the clubs, going to the real estate location, the build outs, what's good, what's bad, working the processes, making recommendations. She's on the franchisor side, learning the support side, and then kept on going up in operations. And then when they brought on a company called Waxing the City, which is a brand, body hair waxing brand, she was helping out, bringing them in, integrating that company into the Anytime Fitness ecosystem. And she ended up being the president of Waxing the City for a while. And we're still super close friends with the founders, who are based here in Denver. So then she was in acquisitions and deal, and and integrating and putting in new learning management systems and all this kind of stuff. And so basically all the Anytime things, just based on the mentorship of Chuck and Dave and all the leaders in that organization, we learned a ton, and we really enjoyed being part of the Anytime Fitness ecosystem. We still are. We sold all of our clubs besides one that's in Steamboat Springs. And then we applied that to starting our own beauty brand, which was Frenchie's Modern Nail Care. And that started out as an idea around a kitchen table. And then 10 years later, we sold the company to the Riverside Company, private equity company that specializes in small to mid-sized markets, and has a pretty big franchising influence. I think we were their 50th franchise acquisition. Um, and they have a home services platform of brands that has 8 or 9, I think. They have a B2B services franchise platform, and then they're building up their beauty platform. And Frenchie's was the second acquisition in that platform. And so going through that process was really cool too, because I didn't utilize the services of investment banking, which in hindsight I probably should have. another learning opportunity, but I did learn a ton along the way, which I think will help me in what I'm going to go to next. And so yeah, we had a good exit, and taking something from an idea at a kitchen table to building it up and having an unbelievable team and affecting all these people's lives, and then leaving it in the hands of the team, because our team still works there, and put it in more sophisticated hands with more capital to get better systems and all that kind of stuff was the right thing to do. And now we're on to other things in franchising, and sorry, that was way over 30 seconds, but that's my background in terms of a franchisee and a franchisor.
Hey, so if you want to figure out if you should buy a franchise and learn the fastest and easiest way to figuring out the best franchise to buy and everything you need to know about the process, then you'll want to go get access to our Franchise Buyers Academy. In our Franchise Buyers Academy, you'll get a behind-the-scenes look into specific franchises and exactly how much money they are making. You'll get simple formulas for finding money-making franchises and a blueprint on how to scale them into a franchise empire that can be sold for a lot of money later on. You'll be able to finally answer the question on Should I buy a franchise? Now, you can get access at franchiseempire.com/FBA. Now, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. It's so unique that someone has the background that you do, having been a successful Zor, exited the company, obviously owned the locations that you have with Anytime Fitness as a franchisee. Um, I'm curious about. Well, actually, there's so many questions in my head. I'm so excited. I love interviewing people like you that have accomplished what you've accomplished and have all the experience because, like, part of it is I'm like, ooh, what do I want to ask him? And then like, okay, what are people actually interested in? Which may not always be the same thing.
Right. Right. I'm sure there's crossover.
Yeah, probably. Well, here's something that I think where there is crossover. So you and your wife, business partners work together. We at Franchise Empire work with a lot of franchise buyers where the husband and wife are obviously making the decision together. They're going to be working together. Tell me about the difference between strengths and skill sets with you and your wife. And what are some tips on how to make it work when working with your spouse? And maybe some things to like, definitely don't do this.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because I am a huge believer in entrepreneurship, helping not just individual lives, but family lives and communities and the US and other countries that are utilizing entrepreneurship capitalism as a way to grow, not just financially. The big thing for me that I see in entrepreneurship, I will get to your specific question, but I think it leads to this. And entrepreneurship, I think, is the biggest eye opener in terms of our codependency as humans on this planet. I always give the example is, I know that sounds like very grandiose and like we're talking about business here, right? But there's a reason for it. So I always give the example, like, we're right downtown Littleton, Colorado. There's shops on Main Street here, that I don't really even want to use their products. Like there's a spice shop. I'm not a big cook or anything like that, but I go into the spice shop once a month and I buy some spice stuff, like, because I want that shop to be there. And if everybody else walks by it and orders it on Amazon, they're not going to be there. And they're helping me with my business just by being here, bringing people in, and I'm helping them by bringing people into our office space and having them go over there and doing my poultry rub or something once a month. So I think it's that big of a thing. I think it shows the codependence. I've worked in big corporations, gigantic corporations, and I think there's a insularity there that you just don't get. Like if is what I'm doing affecting my neighbor in business or at home or whatever. So to your question is, we have a lot of people that come into franchising that are husband and wife, and sometimes one of them is leading the way and the other one is maybe not digging their heels in, but they're not like, I'm so excited about this. Like they might be at two different levels of like, I'm excited about this, or, totally opposite levels. So that would be the first thing I would say is like, don't do this. Like if your spouse is not just concerned and worried about risk or anything like that, but is like really against like the business concept or or something like that, it is, you're never going to win that argument and you're never going to win, and you need the spousal support down the line, because small business, there's going to be rough patches, and you definitely don't need someone in your ear saying like, I told you so. Like you need someone to be like, you're the woman, you can do this, or you're the man, you got this. Like there's going to be those rough patches, and you have to have spousals, even if they're not, even if they're like remote and they have their own career, or if they're like, I trust you, like go ahead and do that. Like you just don't need someone fighting against you, because there's going to be downtimes. You're going to hear about a competitor coming in and want to share that, and you don't want to be like, I don't want to share that because then it looks like I didn't see that coming, or it's going to be a I told you so moment. um but I do think that even if someone isn't into the business, but they're super supportive, and you know that they have your back, whether that's, a guy supporting his wife that's going into business or vice versa. It doesn't matter, in terms of who's who. Um, that's huge. And I think it lends a whole, it's like a dream team then, because no matter what, you're going to have different skill sets, unless you're both like data nerds or something like that. Nothing wrong with data nerds. Having one on the team is awesome, for sure. So I think that's it, like just in terms of emotional support. And then there's something that each party can bring to it, and the expectation has to be set up front. As like, we've had people come to our discovery days in the past, and we were in the beauty business, and it was a guy that was leading the charge because he thought his wife would like to be in the beauty industry, and like she wasn't into it at all. She wants to be a consumer in the beauty industry. She didn't want to be like running teams, and responsible for 15 people.
Well, it's a totally different thing. It's like when people experience a brand and they're like, "Ooh, I want to own one of these," and it's like, well, experiencing the brand and loving the product or service it is night and day difference than running and operating the
Yeah,
business.
exactly. Yeah. And then I would say for your people that are looking at, concepts, is one of the things that see people not doing a lot is talking to other franchisees, because they're either worried about taking their time, or maybe they don't want to hear it, or they just aren't thinking about it too much. But I think that is something that, you talk to a few franchisees and you find out what that lifestyle is like, and how they feel. You gotta weigh it, because people that aren't performing well will lots of times have something negative to say about the franchisor, when it might not be the franchisor's portion, responsibility. um, to just talk to a broad array of them, and people are way more. I find in franchising, I'm sure you found this too, is at first I was like, I can't believe this guy in Tennessee is giving me his secrets on how he's like driving membership sales, like. And then I was like, well, he's in Tennessee and I'm in Colorado, so maybe that's why he's sharing that with me. But I found later on, even with people like we were competing with in franchising in the beauty space, it is like, no, it's all about execution. And they're more than willing, if they think you're doing a good job for your consumers and your team, they're happy to share stuff with you. I find that franchising is the most sharing environment that I've ever been in terms of business. It's a lot different than, working in a big corporation. That's my experience anyway. And so I think that's one of the things that I would say is, have both people be involved in those conversations, even if one of them is going to be kind of like a silent partner, emotional support, or anything like that. Just include them in on every aspect of it, and so that you're not having to communicate and, interpret what someone says, and then tell your loved one that's going to be tied to this cart that you're buying. You want them to hear it firsthand too, even if it's, maybe you're like, I don't want anybody to rain on my parade. I'm super pumped about this. It just gives you more. Everything happens in conversations. I say that all the time. Um, and the more conversations you can have about it, about this big thing, because it's a 10-year commitment, and it's a lifestyle commitment for sure. um, I would say, like, more conversations, the better. Franchisees can share things that the franchisor can't, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you want to hear it all. And even if you hear like a challenging part, just take it in the overall picture. Is, yeah, there's going to be challenges. It's, franchise isn't a recipe for like no worries. It's like, it's a recipe for, getting there faster and hopefully getting bigger. But it's, the more conversations you have, the better. And to include whoever is making a decision with you, whoever is going to be affected by it, is a really good idea, to just include them in as many, even if they don't make it. Like, the invite is just as good, I would say. And then if you happen to have something like Stephanie is really good at operations, she's way better at I don't want to say confrontation, but she's not confrontational, but she's way more likely to. What's that?
Like addressing conflict and having tough conversations.
Yeah, yeah. She'll do it like boom, like right away, and nips things in the bud. Like or the air is cleared. Whereas I'm like, oh, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll wait till later, things like that. So she's great with that. And I'm more like finance and strategy and things like that. And just kind of thinking bigger picture and like, what about this? Like
So
during COVID.
you're like the visionary. You're familiar with EOS and
Yeah,
traction.
yeah.
So you're like the
Visionary
visionary.
integrator. Yeah.
She's the integrator.
Yep, totally. I mean, we fit those bills. Like we use EOS for everything. Like all of our, we even use it for our family meetings.
Really? That's funny. Oh my goodness, we have something in common. We use EOS for Franchise Empire for a team, and then my wife and I have a weekly, family meeting with just us, not the kids because they're 3 and 6. But I actually put it into EOS 1. We wind up getting off of it and not using it, but now that you're saying it, maybe I'll get back on that so we can track it there. But it's brilliant.
Yeah, it works. I mean, we have an L10 every week. Our kids are 17 and 19, so they have accountability and things like that.
You do with your kids too.
Yeah, now we do. Yeah, so that it's how it is with that L10. Not to get too in the weeds, but it's like these are the things that you've agreed to say and do, and then if you get 80% of them done, you're doing pretty good. And if you're getting 30% done, you better get on your horse.
Or else
Be
Stephanie
better.
will say something about it.
Exactly. Yeah, good point. Good
She'll call
point.
you
She
out.
would. Oh yeah, no problems. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I would say. And I love the idea because like going back to your question, husband and wife and things like that, it's like franchising has changed our life. Like we could not have done what we've done since 2006 without franchising. And a lot of people along the way, our friends have experienced the same things. And you don't have I don't say work life balance. I say work life integration because I'm sure the same as you. Like if it's Sunday and I need to look at stuff, it's Sunday and I need to look at stuff or whatever. Like I'm always trying to keep up. Um, and my kids have learned so much by like seeing everything. Like it's like I don't go to work and they wonder like I wonder what he's doing today. Like they see us working all the time, and but some of that time is like up at our cabin. Like, yeah, I got to get off the boat. I got to go take a phone call or two. I'll see you guys in an hour. It's like it's not every day is like that, but like when my kid was 11, he's like, "Hey, do we own the real estate in Steamboat or do we lease that?" I was like
At
said
11,
111
ask that.
at 11 because they hear
Wow.
everything on the phone, right? Like when you're in the car, like pickup line, like at school or something like that, they hear everything. So you don't know what they're learning, but they learned a ton. Like my 19-year-old is working in one of our businesses right now, and at first like the sales trainer is like I'm not teaching owners kids, like I'm not wasting my time on that. I'm like, just let them be on the calls for like 2 times. And she's like, oh, he's good. Like it's not going to be a problem at all. So they learn so much, and then it gives us anything that was super important. We were both there, you know um, and luckily, even when Stephanie was working for Anytime Fitness corporate, they really focus on family. So if there was something going on and she was supposed to be in Minnesota that week, and she's like, "Hey, we've got X thing going on," they're like, "That's family. Like, go. We'll see you next week." Like, it's great to have that. And that was before all the Zoom and virtual stuff too. That's before it was all cool. They were still doing the right thing. So yeah, and that's the other thing I think is entrepreneurship and small business, that it allows families to be more families. Like not siloed. Like, oh, dad went to work or mom went to work or they're both at work and I'm at daycare, but someone's going to pick me up. And there's workarounds for that. Like we had, as the boys were growing up, just because we traveled all the time. So over the years we had like 6 au pairs, people that would live with us. And and that added an element that, first of all, we probably couldn't afford it if we were just working corporate jobs or something like that, at that point in time. It added an element of international flair. We had Uruguayans and Thai people and South Africans and Ukrainians and Colombian gal that's still has found her husband when she was with us. She's up in Steamboat, and then our Ukrainian gal came back when the war broke out. She was technically a refugee, so she was able to come back. But all those kind of things just added to it is like this little tribe of people that were going all over, but the kids were taken care of. Um, and the kids are seeing what mom and dad did, and also seeing the light, like the celebrations, like grand opening, oh, it's going great. And wow, I can't believe that person just embezzled $40,000 from us. They spent Christmas with us 2 years ago.
No,
It's
did that
like,
happen?
oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's, they see it and they're like, all right, there's really good people and sometimes people aren't so good, like eyes wide open. And it doesn't define who we are going forward. It's just like, it's life lessons that really make a difference in their lives in person every day, you know, and to have that as a family, like your kids are going to see, like it's the same thing. I mean, it's just a richer way of living, I think. Richer, not money, but richer experience, shared experience wise.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, so my wife and I, we have an office that's 7, 8 minutes from our house. And we rent like a 1,200 square foot office. It's like an office suite. I mean, we got like a mini kitchen in here, and then there's basically four different walled offices. One's a studio, one's my office, one's my wife, one's storage. We have like a lobby area. And so since it's so close to home and like literally 30 seconds from the gym we go to on the weekend, before we go to the gym and bring the kids to be at the childcare center in the gym, like we'll stop by the office, and we're constantly bringing them to the office. And so that's working on their brains a little bit. Again, they're only 3 and 6. Our son Caleb will be like, Caleb, what does daddy do? And he's like, daddy's an entrepreneur. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, we can figure out what that means, later on, but at least he knows. And definitely trying to really plant those seeds. And I'm at the stage, especially with a lot of stuff going on in the business, where I'm coming home at 7 o'clock, so many nights. And but I'll take the kids to school and stuff, and we obviously have a lot of flexibility. And so when we do something that's really cool, like our son loves a Great Wolf Lodge.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We got that.
And so we took him, and we took him during Christmas time, the week of Christmas. So twice as much as what it would normally be.
Yeah.
Very
I
very
was gonna
expensive
say,
for
good,
whatever.
good bargain hunting.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was a pricey trip. And so I just try to remind him. I'll say to him, Kale. I call him Kale. Um, when daddy's like working late, or like when I'm working really hard, or I leave early in the morning, it's to be able to do things like this. Like, this is what, and I try to just link the experience for him. This has come from working really hard, and when mommy and daddy say we're going to work, and on Saturday, when one of us are going to the office, or on a Sunday, one of us are going to the office for a few hours, hey, remember when mommy and daddy said we were going to work? This is the result of going to work. So he starts to kind of link it and get it. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, and to raise kids like that, where they get like, oh, it's work even when you don't want to. It's work with some people you love working with, and some people that you're not crazy about working with, but you got to work with them. Yeah, that's just life lessons that you just, it's in the family home, it's in the car, it's in your office. That's just seeping into them, and they're going to be hard workers. And I'm sure it's always been an advantage, but never more of an advantage than right now, where people are like, "Oh yeah, this kid showed up on time and he like really worked his butt off." I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty rare. Not to be pessimistic, but like, those are the kids that like, oh, I do this, here's the consequence. I don't do this, here's the consequence. So it's, yeah, like, tell me that that's not going to improve the fabric of society when people are linking those things together. That's entrepreneurship. Yeah.
100%. We got about 10 minutes left. I'm really curious to pick your brain and understand your thoughts on hiring. Like building a team in order to build an actual business, and as opposed to being a solopreneur, it's just not possible without building a team. Like building a team is everything in business, at least what I'm learning, and bringing on the right people is everything. Like literally the same strategy can either completely bomb if you have C players, or you can hit a grand slam with the same exact strategy if you have A players. So for preface first with about how many people do you think you've hired and fired, just to lay down the credibility for a second, not that you need any more of it. And then number two, tell me about your process when you're hiring people. What's your process from a strategic tactical standpoint, and then what are the soft things that you're looking for?
Yeah. I don't know how many people I've hired and fired. It's in the hundreds, for sure. And I am I'm like an optimist. So I like to see the best in people first. And to be honest, I'm not like I always admire. I have a good friend that he doesn't even read his own emails, I don't think. But he can spend 5 minutes with somebody and know that person, like know their heart. Like that's someone you can trust. That's someone you can't trust. Boom. And he's proven it to me like over and over again. I don't have that gift. Like I can read and assimilate knowledge and things like that, but I'm believing people a lot, which is not the best person to be hiring people. So I've learned, and now it's a little bit easier, like in this chapter because, um, I take a little bit more time. I've seen a little bit more things that now create red flags in my head for that. And then the other thing is,
What are some examples of things that would create red flags for you?
oh, just the basic things like I like to go out to a meal with people, if possible. Like I said, everything happens in a conversation. Now, this is not the first interview or anything like that. There's a screening process for that. But how they are. I mean, as basic as it is, and this is very cliche, but people still make mistakes doing it. Like how they treat the wait staff. Are they on time? What did they wear? You can tell I'm not a super fancy guy, but like I want, to be honest, I want to work with people that just have their stuff together, you know, look presentable, can show up on time. I don't want to hear about, excuses or anything like that for, oh, it's traffic today. It's like, there's traffic every day. Like you should have left earlier. Let's just say that. Um, just accountability is the number one thing. Just ask them questions about successes and challenges that they've had, and how much of it relates back to them in terms of success, and how much of it relates back to them in terms of failures, or challenges that they've encountered. um, that's that's huge for me. We've tried, it's interesting. We've Over the years we've tried a bunch of different things, like for the personality disc and personality, and like all these other personality things and different things. And it was actually Chuck who at one point in time, they didn't have an HR department, so he was doing a lot of stuff. And he's one of those people that's really smart about. He can kind of pick up on people and find rock stars and things like that in the rough. Um, and he's like, yeah, we tried all that stuff, and at the end of the day, like they could get through all the filters, and they were great in the interviews. Some people are great in that, and then they would show up and just be a dud. Like a big thing for me, another thing that I like to look for, which was very hard in beauty, um, was team sports. I think that's a really big thing. Those are, in the grand scheme of things, a little league baseball season or a high school baseball season or hockey or whatever sport it is. Um, is, it's not that much of a commitment, but it's a commitment, and you got to go when you don't feel like going sometimes and all those kind of things. And just that team aspect is really big. So I found that people that came, I didn't realize this until we got into beauty, is like a lot of our workforce was younger females, and a lot of them were more creative than athletic, and so we would be talking about, the team element, like, like some days you're not going to be 100%, but someone else is, and, they can shore you up and then you shore them up when they're having a bad day. And they'd be like, what? like, you haven't been on a team, have you? And they're like, nope, and it's very, that's just not their background. Right. And so, and we had team-based pay. And so we had to like kind of teach them about the support aspect. Yes, there's some limitations when you're on a team, but the benefits of being on a team are far bigger. You know what I mean?
Tell me more about that team-based pay. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So in beauty, it is in beauty. There's a lot of sharp elbows. Like if you go into a nail studio, like a normal nail studio, which is what we were trying to like change. It's commission. A lot of those places are commission only. And if you're a good tipping client, people will be elbowing each other to be able to do your service. And it's all based on like, if I win, then you lose, zero sum game. And and that's what it was like. And it's very scary for these young gals that are in beauty school, cosmetology school, and then they got to go out, and especially in nails, because a lot of nail businesses are family owned businesses, and you're probably not going to get into them unless you're part of the family. Um, but it's the same in hair and estheticians and all that kind of stuff. Is you're going out there and you're trying to go into this place where there's a limited number of customers coming in, and you want to get your share, and it's a hierarchy. And it's also, there's a very very structured hierarchy. It's informal, but it's there. Is if you're the highest price service, you're the big person on the totem pole, and as you go down, you're the lowest person and you get the least amount of respect. So in most cases, like at a day spa, the lowest person on the totem pole is the nail specialist, the nail person, because their service is the least priced, right? So they were going into that, and we wanted to change that so that it was dependable pay for the people that were coming to Frenchies to work. They got that, like, not everybody's going to be on their A game every day, including you. So to be part of a team, it really helps, to rely on team and be that provider for other people. And that was the other thing that we were trying to help, these young gals, come to, is like, you're the expert, like, and you are capable of helping other people, not just your clients. You're able to take care of your team members. And when this studio does better, we all do better. And so we would have 7 parameters, for each specialist, broken down by each nail specialist. And then they would obviously accumulate into goals for, average ticket price, returning client retention, first client retention, all these different parameters. And there was extra, every one of them had a certain amount of extra money when they did that individually. And the studio made their goal that everybody would get paid more money, so that then it wasn't like, I don't feel like going to work today. They would be like, oh, if I don't go to work today, we're going to lose out on that revenue. I got to find someone to either take my shift, or I'm really impacting the team today. So, so that led to a lot of like, hopefully helping people have better behaviors with coworkers, like more communication, kinder communication, more long range planning. That, like, what you find in a lot of beauty is something comes up and it's, drama, and it throws everything off. It's like, that's not what we're running here. Like, we're running a machine, and you're a part of it. Like, you're a big part of it. And the better the machine does, the better you're going to do. And that was something that we learned from a company called Strategies, that specializes in the beauty industry. We actually went to their we didn't know that much about it, but we studied it and went to their seminars. And when we sold, all the studios in the Frenchie system were using the same approach. They didn't have to, obviously, because you can't specify that as a franchise, right? But it just worked really well. And we have two people that we were. The other thing that we did in that team thing is we would give people like micro leadership positions, like someone likes the supplies, like, okay, you're in charge of the inventory now, like you're going to take the inventory, you're going to do the ordering, we're going to show you how to do that. Someone else was like, I want to know more about the numbers. Like that was pretty rare, but that the person that was a 17-year old that started with us, and I couldn't get a word out of her. I worked the front desk for the first 6 months, and I'm the worst. We called it the concierge position, and I'm terrible at multitasking. Like I still am. And it's not even because I'm old. I've never been good at that. I'm like heads down, all good. But that position was like answering the phone, working the computer, checking people out, checking people in. I was like, I can't get anything done. And then we would, in the beginning, we changed this because of me. We would have like this bench of seats for people to wait for their appointment. And so it was like I had an audience to be watching my totally ineffective. And they're like, aren't you the owner? I'm like, yes, I'm not designed for this. But I learned a ton. But I couldn't get a word out of this gal, just even in our one-on-ones. And then like 6 months in, I was like, is there anything you want to know about this business? And she's like, I'd like to know about the numbers. I was like, okay, like we'll share numbers. Like we got no problem with that. And so I started like showing her the numbers and what it meant and like what a difference in average ticket price meant for the overall studio and all these things. Um, she was 17. She kind of rose up through the ranks. She was the manager of the studio. She bought a studio that was not doing well, that did like the month before she bought it, that studio did $17,000. And 2 months later, it was doing $50,000 and $60,000. That's how good she is.
Wow.
And she's still with Frenchies, and she's also their director of training and development, besides owning a studio. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, and then we played a small part in another manager buying a studio that was doing really well, but the company didn't want to have corporate studios anymore. And so out of all the stuff that we've done in franchising, those playing a part in those two things, because that changed the trajectory of their lives and they deserved it, but it was just an opportunity. Um, yeah, Stephanie and I are really, really proud of those things.
That's so cool. That's awesome. All right, last question. What do you think on the hiring subject? So let's say you wind up hiring someone, they got the heart, they're a solid person, you tell they're a person of integrity, they're hitting all of your boxes, but EOS has the framework of GWC, right? Get it, want it, have the capacity to do it. What happens when you have a solid person in terms of ethic, integrity, shows up on time, but they just don't get it? Meaning, like, maybe they're a fish trying to climb a tree or something. Like, things just aren't aligning for whatever reason. Have you had that? And in that situation, what do you do? What do you work through there?
Yeah. Um, the closest situation I have with that is something that happened fairly recently, and it was just someone that great guy. People liked working with them, clients, team members, everything like that. But he's so nice, and he's in a sales position, and he just lets people off the hook. I'm like, dude, we're not selling crack or ice cream. We're selling fitness. Like this is an investment, in their health. So like you got to get a little bit more aggressive. And I had the same challenge with a trainer earlier than that, and I was able to reframe this for her, and then she became, a top seller. And like, you're looking at these clients like they're a wallet, and she's anything but that. Like she's like she doesn't want to offend anybody. And so I said that to get her attention, and she's like, I do not look at people like they're a wallet. I'm like, Yes, you are. You're looking at them like they have your wallet and like you don't have a ton of money and you don't want them to invest. But these are very wealthy people. And the best thing that they could invest their money in is their health and wellness so that they can do the things that they want to do longer. And you're kind of not going for it because you're worried about their money, you know? And she's like, well, that's a different way of looking at it, you know? Um, so, to, to answer your question, like if someone's got the attitude and a work ethic, unless I'm not in any business that's rocket science that like, oh, like they just don't have the horsepower for this. Like I'm in fitness and beauty. There's nothing, it's like some data, and people are like, well, I'm not a numbers person. I'm like, if you can make the correlation between what's showing on your speedometer and how fast you're going down the highway, you can read your KPIs and make correlations. This is not hard. This is not numbers. It's not calculus. Um, and then that kind of gets people. So like, I haven't run into a problem where it's like there's just no way that they're going to be able to do this. Um, Not lately, anyway. But I don't know. I mean, I defer to the if you got someone that's hardworking and is treating people right, I'll spend more money getting them trained. That gentleman that I just shared with you, like I have specialized coaching for him, outside of what I coach, specialized for that because he'll be. I'm just positive that he'll be worth the investment, and he'll have this skill for he's 27 years old, so he's got, to me that's like a kid, so like he'll have this skill that we're investing in him whether he's with us. I hope, because I'd like to get a return on the investment, and I think we will, but if nothing else he gets better at sales. Sales is the hardest thing in the world, and I think it's one of the most important things in the world. Like we're doing it all day every day, and it's special. Like we're in this other business, and it's very specialized sales, and we had all of our team go through this specialized sales training even though most of us have been selling for 40 years. Like, because it's that important, so yeah, I just haven't had it where it's a really good person that's trying their darndest and we have something that's just beyond their realm of capability. So maybe if you were talking to someone with more complicated businesses, it might apply, you know. But for me, it's, like if you find that right person, I guess what I would say is, um, like if I think you're doing the same thing with your business and all your businesses, like if you're not growing, you're dying. Like it's like being on a down escalator and you stop walking, like you are going to digress if you don't keep on growing. And I'm always like, well, if we don't have something for that person right now, can they at least do the job well enough that it's not costing us money and as long as they're treating people right, that like when we grow, is there somewhere else that we can use their talents in a better place, something like that. Or if I ran into that problem, like, one of the benefits of being older is like a huge network. Like if someone's a really good person, I have no problem trying to find them another job, you know,
Yeah, that's awesome.
somewhere else.
Cool, Guy. I really enjoyed it, man. Really
Me
awesome
too.
connecting with you again. Thanks for coming on. I know that I'm going to be on yours here soon. Is it tomorrow? I don't even.
Yeah.
Is it tomorrow or next
Friday.
week? It's
Friday.
Friday. Friday.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
today's Wednesday. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So Friday. All right. There you go. See that? That's what a CRM migration will do to you. I'm
I
like,
can't
what day of the
imagine.
week is it?
Yeah. Like I tried to do my own workflows in that, and I'm like, oh no, I'm hiring this out. Like when you said a couple hundred workflows, I'm like, no,
Well,
no
fortunately,
thank.
I'm not building it, but I'm having to oversee the whole dang migration, and it's just, it's wild and planted, and I do not like project management. That is not something that I think is a super strength of mine. I don't enjoy it, and I have become, a project manager overseeing this project that I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. So we'll see how it turns out, but
I'm sure it'll turn out fine. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for a great conversation, great questions, and I truly hope it helps someone that listens. And I'm sure you'll have my contact information there. Reach out to me on LinkedIn or whatever. I'm all about helping people out. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, man. Hey, before we go, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already. And the biggest thank you that you could ever give me is to share this episode with someone who you think will benefit. That means that we can share this message with more people and hopefully positively inspire them like we have you. So thank you. And until next time, go build your empire.